Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for coming along to attend the launch of our Healthy Weight and Treating Obesity Community of Practice. So we're all here today basically following on from our LOC conference that took place in November, and I'm sure many of you were there. So we want to capitalise on the energy and enthusiasm that was generated from the event. We heard from some fabulous speakers on the day and also got to learn some really good practice from the 12 different workshops. And one of the things we said we would do as part of the conference afterwards was launch this community of practice to help keep the momentum going, continue to learn and improve together as a system to help support the key actions that came out of the day. And I'm just going to very quickly flash up what those key priorities were, just as a reminder, and also for those of you that weren't able to be there on the day. So these were the 7 priorities which attendees produced on the back of what was heard on the day. So just to quickly run through them. So the first one being using health literacy to promote access. To start a conversation for partnership between schools, ICB providers about food education and cooking. Also looking at the good food economy, community links, healthy weight declaration. Fourthly, a support offer at the point of pregnancy without putting all responsibility on the woman. The 5th one was building a social movement. The 6th one was digital or AI support for individuals on the waiting list. And then finally, how do we get a stigma-informed system working? So these are the things that the attendees on the day came up with that they would like to move forward with. So what we're going to cover today is we are going to be joined by Will Smith, who's going to be providing us with an update on the system work that's taken place since Lock in the Lakes. We are then going to hear from Sam Joughlin, who's Director and Cognitive Behavioural Therapist at Together We, and she's going to talk to us about the psychological aspects of obesity, which particularly links to that last key action from Lock around how we get that stigma-informed system. And then finally, we're going to look at the next steps for this community of practice. So we'll do a bit of a breakout room exercise to find out from yourselves what would you guys like from this and what you would like to achieve. So without further ado, I will hand over to Will. Over to you.
Yeah, am I okay to share my slides?
Yeah, no problem at all, Will.
Don't worry, it's only a handful, nothing too drastic. Just put it back a little bit. Just put it on slideshow. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Yeah, we've got it.
Perfect. Let me just minimize my little bit so I'd see it. So I've introduced myself in the chat, but I'm Will Smith. I'm the Healthy Weight and Treating Obesity Strategic Manager for the North East and North Cumbria. Our work stream was born out of kind of the prevention work back in about 2020, 2021, where they decided that obesity was a priority after a kind of a couple of attempts in terms of highlighting the impact of it. And I think the thing that got us over the line was actually the level of need across the North East and North Cumbria. Basically, the data highlighted there was over 725,000 people who were living with a BMI of greater than 30. Of about 288,000 of them would classify as needing a specialist weight management service. So I think that was the bit that tipped it over the edge and got it as a prevention priority within the NHS. And what's kind of come of it is we've done lots and lots of work all around kind of development of services, recovery of services, and trying to build business cases for next steps and how we can work towards it and tackle the obesity crisis, but also at the side of things as well in terms of turning off the tap as well. And one of the things that we challenged was that we had to turn off the tap, but we also have to look at treating individuals who are living with obesity and the significant kind of comorbidities and complexities and other elements that come with living with obesity. And one of the things that we were tasked with is how could we turn off the tap, but also how could we treat them? But what is a strategy that we could hang our hats off? So we did a big engagement event back in April 2024, got people from across the system and people within this call had attended that event and contributed to it. And what happened is we had the 4 strategic themes. I won't labour them because I know I presented them at the Lock on the Lake, but what we did is we distilled it down into 4 simple kind of strategic themes, which is a whole system approach, advocacy for the food environment, service provision and workforce, with our 2 enablers being comms and engagement and data and intelligence. So we've got a lot of work going on underneath each of these strategic themes, and work across the North East and North Cumbria that we've been doing and we're currently doing, and driven by these themes as well. So what I wanted to kind of do was just quickly present how I've like linked them together in terms of stuff that we're doing, and just thinking for this group, just to let you know what we're doing and how we could link it together, or how you could link with us specifically, however you want to do it. And that's to be decided kind of as we go through this call. But in terms of like the whole system approach of the, you know, advocacy and food environment, I felt that's linked very, very strongly with priorities 3 and 5. In terms of service provision and workforce, service provision being actual services, specialist services for both children and adults as well. And we're doing work around the maternity pathway as well. We're trying to do work around the workforce, where we've got the Boost platform, where we've got online School of Healthy Weight and Treating Obesity Studies. And I thought that linked very, very closely to the themes 1, 4, 6 and 7. And then in terms of our enablers, this is what we're doing around the comms and engagement and how it links to those key priorities, and the data intelligence to inform everything that we do. And we've got a healthy weight and treating obesity data dashboard that you can have a nosy at and give you some real-time information about the level of need from like a PCM population right up to whole scale population and some of the factors. So again, I won't labour it too much on this, but this is the kind of the structure that we operate with under, that's bringing that strategic themes to life, and that links very closely with LOC. So in terms of workforce, we've got the programme Healthy Weight and Treating Obesity Studies, where we're examining all kind of opportunities to kind of bring consistent education, advice and guidance support for our current and future workforce as well. And we've got lots of input from psychology, dietetics, bariatric surgeons, pharmacists, to give us a real flavour of what's going on and try and provide that consistent advice and support. We've got one around the specialist weight management services, where we're looking at the kind of service provision, service delivery, the key kind of issues that we're grappling around, particularly like the GLP-1s, how do we administer it in terms of potential prioritisation processes, looking at our kind of structure and longer term service provision. That's both for children and adults as well. You'll probably be mindful, seeing it in the news, tirzepatide was announced just before Christmas, and that they're highlighting that it should be available within primary care from about the summer onwards. So we've been tasked with the primary care pathway development subgroup, and we're looking at how we can develop that kind of pathway and what's the best mechanism and who would be the patients that would be eligible, and could we do a prioritisation process. And we're doing lots of data-driven activity around that, and thinking in it from a health inequalities lens as well, and trying to think about how we can do it morally and ethically and get it to the people who need it most, not those who shout loud enough. So for example, at the moment, probably receiving 1 or 2 FOIs every week, regularly get a ministerial complaint around accessibility and you typically find that they seem to be the more well-read, well-educated patients as well. And we potentially, it might go down like the legal side of things, where people are then going to start getting kind of legal advice and guidance around this as well. Doing a lot of work in terms of children and young people. So we have 2 specialist weight management services across the North East and North Cumbria. Could probably do with more due to the level of number, but what we're looking in terms of how we can make those sustainable and they become a long-time part of what we're trying to do as well. And then the other elements we've got in terms of, we've got primary prevention, and that's looking at the whole system approach, food environment. We're doing lots of work around kind of developing behavioural insights to what does our population think of the food environment that we live in. Do they think that we need to change it? Do we think we need to look at things slightly differently? Can we generate that movement to bring people with us on that journey, understanding, you know, the commercial determinants and the food industry having a powerful impact in terms of the obesity landscape as well, looking at kind of mechanisms of how we can make changes within hospitals and the environments that we work in and live within as well, and trying to get leadership on board with it and having that full strategic approach. So we're working with Food Active to do a healthy weight declaration across the ICB that complements what's going on at local authorities, because a number of local authorities have already done it or are doing it. And what we're trying to do is kind of galvanise that, and can we do it that complements what they're doing, but we're doing it within the NHS and across the ICB. And the final one is the Weight Off Your Mind subgroup, and that's looking at how we can support the mental health trusts in terms of their approach to weight management and healthy weight and tackling obesity as well. And we had a fascinating refresh last week over a couple of days to think about how we could do it and how we could land to strategic themes, and thinking about, and I fully wasn't educated in the difference between community services and inpatient services, and the huge impact that can have on a patient's health and well-being and outcomes in terms of not only the mental health but their physical health as well. So lots of work going underneath all of those, and I think they're linked very clearly with the priorities, and I suppose the debate would be now is how we can kind of link them all together. Do we want to kind of people more than welcome to join the subgroups that we've got and divide that work, or I kind of feed into this community of practice and how we can build onto this work and develop our priorities. So I'll stop there. As I said, didn't want to do too many PowerPoint slides, but just want to give you a flavour of the work that we're doing. And there's a lot going on and more going on, because there's potential from NHS England and funding from central government. There's other kind of pots of fund around the growth health accelerators linked to the health economic inactivity, and how we can look at mechanisms to get support people who are kind of struggling with current sickness or longer term sickness, and how we could support them in terms of health related activities that could support them in terms of their longer term outfits and benefits, and help with them in terms of support them within their work and future work as well. And I'll stop sharing it, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, I'm just going to put in the chat the link to the Learning Academy and the program, the learning program for healthy weight and treating obesity as well, so people have got a direct link to that too.
Yeah, and that's growing by every kind of couple of weeks. We've got more and more modules coming online. We've got some really exciting ones in development around diet and psychology as well. And then we're doing some fantastic work around the weight stigma approach as well, which we're trying to coordinate regionally. So linking in with like Durham and Middlesbrough around work that's kind of been sort of semi-developed already. And we wanted to agree that there's no point kind of duplicating it, that we could just do all as one. So that's been a fantastic opportunity in collaborating, and we do pretty well with making sure we connect with pretty much everyone across the region.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will. I think Catherine Taylor's got her hand up. Catherine.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having problems with my internet today, but what are your connectivities with Cumbria in terms of Westmoreland and Furness as well as Cumberland?
My geography is terrible. Does that sit within North Cumbria, or is that where it's the splitters come?
The splits come with in terms of LGR. So in terms of Westmoreland and Furness, we've got Eden, and then we've got Cumberland. So it's just ensuring that we've got a voice in Cumbria, really.
If more than happy to link in with you and support it. I suppose it's just whether or not it sits within our ICB boundaries. If it's
a little bit of it does, Will. Yeah, there's a part of Westmoreland and Furness that does sit under our ICB. It's just the way the boundaries happened.
Yeah, and you've also got Cumberland. It also fits in with your thing. So it's just making sure we've got a voice there, really.
Yeah, really
Perfect.
Good point, Catherine.
Yeah, definitely. And please connect with us. We've got a number of groups, and we'd love to link in with more people to make sure that we've got our reach across the patch.
Yeah. So I'll put in the chat my email address. So if you can reach out and have a meeting, that'll be really good and beneficial.
Perfect. More than happy to do so.
Brilliant. Thanks, Catherine. Any other questions or comments? I know somebody's asked for the slides, so we can get those sent out afterwards. That's not a problem at all. Karen.
I was just going to ask a question about obviously being in the Boost team myself. I know about the Learning Academy and the healthy weight management program of learning. Could it be that and this will come out hopefully later in the session, but could it be that this community of practice could help populate the learning offer on there? Because at the moment, I'm guessing the programs that are on there are driven. There's a program lead and who coordinates, but and the learning that's on there is being driven, obviously, I'm guessing by the ICB at the moment. But could it be that this amazing community of experts might be able to contribute to be able to offer learning through that program of work?
More than happy to link in with everyone. So we've got a subgroup that we've developed around the healthy weight and treating obesity studies. And what we're doing is that we're bringing everyone there together to discuss what kind of current topics we've got on there. So we've populated with what's currently available nationally and regionally, and we've kind of vetted that we're happy with the content, and we felt that it was kind of in line with the direction of travel for the North East and North Cumbria and our clinical lead and the key people. And then what we've started doing is to identify the gaps of where we think that we don't have strong enough information and up-to-date information, particularly with what we've got going on in the North East and North Cumbria and our direction of travel of having that kind of preventative pathway right through to secondary and tertiary prevention as well. And we do that as a bit of a check and challenge. So we have the clinicians in the room to kind of this is what we're proposing to do. Is everyone happy with that and the content and what we're trying to do with it as well? And we have the clinical lead as well who vets it in terms of, yeah, he's happy with that, and that's the way we want to go with it. And we have good representation now from local authority as well, providing the preventative input as well, which has been fantastic and really beneficial.
Okay, Brill, thank you.
Sarah?
Hello, sorry, my mic wasn't sorry, I've got a cat attacking me as well. My question was, so my role is one of 12 across the region, which is also funded through Healthier and Fairer, to improve some of the infrastructure and connectivity around social prescribing, and those links into the VCSE. And I just wondered, I know things are hopefully going to be aligned a bit better, but I know that our work stream is one of those enablers to yours, I think, and I just wondered what there was that was linking up all the different work that we were doing, how what you're doing connects into this, all the social prescribing work going on, and those broader links into the VCSE.
Need to do more with the VCSE. It came out now when we met with our comms engagement lead in terms of we've done bits but not enough, and we would love to do more. So happy to connect with you and build up that network and how we can get it out there, because I think you're 100% right that you're an enabler to everything we do in terms of some of the conversations that we had early on in terms of linking in what's available, just even signposting kind of the staff to the opportunities for learning to help in terms of their development and the messages they support and work with patients on. Because one thing that clinical lead kind of talks about, when you get patients get to the specialist services that he delivers, it becomes a holistic approach. It's kind of the social, the psychological, the physiological, the medical side of things. It's not just one element that they look at as well. And that's some of the things that we probably need to consider earlier on in terms of preventative messages as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will. Who have we got next? Kelly?
Hi. Yeah, Will knows me very well. Sees me in a few of those subgroups, I'm afraid. But yeah, I just want to mention a couple of things because I didn't get to go. I'm so jealous everybody who got to go to the lock. I didn't get to go. I heard it was amazing. My boss went along. But just when you mentioned that schools were involved, that's my doctorate. So places in London, some of the London boroughs and Swindon have just been in touch and sent me, they're using the practical toolkit that came out of a paper that I published last year in 23. I don't think we've ever had a conversation, Will, about this. I'm not sure. We've talked about that much. I'm not really sure. But it's just, I know that some local authorities, we're still doing a lot of planning around it, a lot of reviews and having lots of conversations with schools. And obviously that's the challenging bit. We do know a lot of the solutions around taking a whole school approach and changing the ethos and sort of supporting schools to understand what the issues are around why the children won't eat it, for example. So that's a lot of the work we're already doing now, but there are places that have already put things in sort of toolkits and from the evidence. So I just thought I'd mention that for whenever that comes up. Give me a shout if I can support. And the other thing is I get sent quite a lot of at the moment I've been sent a regional team with regards to the maternal healthy weight stuff, so I'll look at the slides, and as you know, Will, you've shared things with me. I've seen things. There's the basics around people first language. I'd say let's focus in on the very, very basic around using people first language, because it's still quite prolific across presentations around like the NHS, public health, like OHID, still using non-people first language. So I think if we're thinking about health literacy, let's make sure we've got the basics right, because we know it's a condition, yet the wording is not there yet when we're sharing things with our health professionals. So I just wanted to make that point really as well. Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, and Kelly, it's a dead interesting point when you say about the language and some of the stuff that goes out. I met with Comms and Engagement, and they were talking about getting our strategy out there and how we could do it, and our presence on our website a bit more visual and appealing, and to get more people in. And I'd said we've got to be careful with it, because we've got to have that balance right in terms of we want professionals to engage with it as well, but we also want to make sure it's meaningful and that the patients can engage with it and the public can engage with it as well, because there's a significant interest in terms of what we're doing, and we've got to make sure that we do it right and don't put them off, and get the right level of information as well. Because it was funny, some of the terminology they used, and they just didn't mean to use it. It was just natural terminology that they're used to coming across, and a couple of things that they've done for me, which have been fantastic. Just had to go back and quickly remind them in terms of key terminology.
Yeah, and I'm doing it all the time, even with people like in my team. It's not, you're just reminding people, because we've done that talk that way for so long. It's not, there's nothing behind it. It's just making sure that everybody's like, and everybody's picking up on it. But I tend to say, like, living with, having, classified with, categorized with, like, I give them what to say. So something so simple, rather than having a big document about what people first language is, it's actually really, really simple. So let's give them the simple terms.
Thanks, Kelly. Sam, do you mind if I come to you in a minute? If we go Emma, and then we'll hand over to you, ready for the next part. Perfect. Emma.
Well, thank you for that. Hiya, everyone. Hiya, Will again.
Hiya.
See Will on a few little groups. Yeah, just picking up from the learning. Sorry, I've got a croaky voice. I'll put a little information in the chat. What I'm finding as a health and wellbeing coach is help with motivation, not a problem. But what I'm increasingly coming across is those with that behavioural eating. So they do really well, maybe weeks, months in, they're doing really, really well. Something happens and they go to that boredom eating, the anxiety eating. And I feel really stuck as a health and wellbeing coach of, I need to then signpost them into Impact, which is a long wait list, and it'd be really good if there was some sort of tools out there that I could help as complementary to help the patients with those. So I'm really excited about the learning platform, because every day is a skill day. I'm up for learning. So something like that it would really benefit my role, because I do feel really stuck when I'm presented with a patient who has that sort of eating pattern, eating behaviour. So yeah, so that would be really, really good. And if I can just tag on to Kelly's little bit about comms, my other big passion is BSL. Quite a lot of our information isn't in BSL. So if we can look around that, please, and have a little videos to help support our BSL patients, that would be amazing as well.
And like, perfect suggestions sound great, and that kind of stuff would be perfect if you could drop it into our subgroups, or however we decide to do it from today. Take your point around the kind of the behavioural unhelpful relationships with food that a lot of patients struggle with as well. And it's dead interesting, because in terms of the specialist services, they're identifying about 40 to 50% of the people who arrive in their services have that kind of relationship with food. And some of it's kind of then there's a debate in terms of, is it disordered eating or eating disorders as well, which you know, it's things to consider. And it's something that we're looking into in terms of training, and then in terms of the potential modules as well to help with that as well, and in terms of like what the pathway would look like. So again, fully acknowledging it, and it is a big thing as well that we need to look at and address.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. I'm up for any subway, any groups I'm in. Thank you.
Stuff. Yeah, some fab thoughts here. So bear this all in mind for the breakout room activity when we start looking at what next for the community of practice. Sam, over to you.
I think I've just put it into the chat to say that the next talk will probably help with it, and it very much kind of aligns with where we're going to go to in the conversation around disordered eating and the psychological aspects of obesity. But my question to you, Will, was how do I get involved with the groups as well? I really would love to. We used to have a working group that was North Cumbria based, when public health based, and then it seems to have fizzled out. So if there's anything that I could get involved with, I really would like to.
Perfect. Yeah, let's get in touch.
Great. I will send you an email after this.
Yeah.
Am I okay to just share slides?
Yeah, over to you, Sam. Thank you ever so much, Will.
No problem. Thank you.
For sharing the update.
Remind me how long I've got, Ashley.
45 minutes, if that's all right, Sam.
Yeah, can you nudge me if
I will do. That's all good.
Give me 1 second while I see how I'm doing this. Why not when I do this? Is it doing it?
Yeah, we've got it, Sam.
Can you guys see it? Yeah.
We've got it.
Okay. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller in the corner. Okay, so thank you for letting me do this. I can't see my little arrows. Sorry. So I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Sam Joughlin. I'm operating officer at Together We. We're a mental health organisation that's based within North Cumbria. We're a non-for-profit organisation, a community interest company. I'm a psychological therapist as well, a cognitive behavioural therapist. And I was so lucky to be able to do this at Loch. And I reached out afterwards and said, please, can I do this again? Because it was amazing at Loch, and I had lots of feedback that said that people would love to be able to do further training. So it's definitely something that I know that there's a need for, and I know that there's such a wide need, and probably more input that needs to be put in than what I can even do as well. So the aim of kind of my talk today is to talk about the psychological aspects of obesity, and it's just really to broaden the understanding of some of the psychological aspects and mental health aspects of weight and living with obesity. And I'm going to talk about some of the lived experience voices. So to talk about this, I should really talk about where they come from. Within North Cumbria, we were very lucky to receive some funding within Together We to host a disordered eating project. Now, it was meant to be a step-down project from our North Cumbria Adult Eating Disorder Service. It was for people who didn't meet the criteria of the Adult Eating Disorder team. So they weren't severe enough to meet clinical diagnosis for an eating disorder, but they also weren't. I'm trying to think of the wording of this. They also were not right to be able to go to early intervention services. And what I mean by that is they may, for instance, have been eating in response to other things. So they could have had another condition. So, for instance, an example of this is that they may have had a personality disorder, and they were eating in response to emotional distress. And that means that they didn't meet a diagnosis. It was a disordered eating diagnosis. It wasn't in response to anything else. It wasn't a clinical diagnosis, and it wasn't causing any severe impact or any nutritional deficiencies. So they came to us. It didn't mean it didn't make any distress on their life, and it didn't make it any less impactful on their life. And so that's how they ended up with our service. So this is where these lived experience voices are from. And I want to just kind of state that every voice that you hear within this workshop, they gave permission, and I specifically asked for their thoughts and what their experiences were in this workshop. I won't talk about what's available in North Cumbria because I'm aware that this is more of a wider workshop as well, but this was just from when we did the Loch.
So just talking a little bit about eating behaviours and obesity. So we believe in Together With that behaviour is a communication. But most people will do something not just for fun. There's usually something behind it. Quite often we know that eating behaviours can be a signal to some underlying emotional distress, or somebody rightly said before, sometimes we do something because of boredom or because of habit or because of routine. And we're going to talk about some of those key areas today. So we're going to talk about things like trauma responses. We're also going to talk about emotional dysregulation. I'm not going to talk about routine, but it is one of those things that typically tends to happen, is that we get into a routine of eating. Sometimes it's not that sometimes eating behaviours don't just happen because we're hungry. Eating behaviours happen because it's a communication. Eating behaviours can be used to satisfy unmet needs. It can be used because of our need to comfort ourselves, to control ourselves, or it can be used for neglect. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about eating behaviours is considering the wider reasons behind it. And that's the reason why we have these talks, is because quite often, whenever I've worked with a person, there's a certain thing that they've heard throughout their lives. Just eat less, just eat more, just move more, just do less, just do this, just change your diet. Have you tried Slimming World? Have you tried this? Have you tried calorie counting? Have you tried? And quite often it's not helpful because there's something else that's happening underneath. Now on this page, there's something called a formulation, and it's something that we use within cognitive behavioural therapy. Cognitive behavioural therapy is very formulation driven. What we mean by that is that we're trying to understand what happens with a person. We're trying to paint a picture around that person. We're understanding what happens before an event. We're understanding what's happening during the event, and then we're understanding the consequences. So the example in this one is that just before the event, something happens, they have a trigger, the antecedent, the stimuli. This example was that their trigger was having too much junk food at home. They had their trigger foods at home, or they were going to social events. They then went ahead and they engaged in unhealthy eating behaviours. They started to pick and eat a large amount of food. And then often it gives them some sort of positive reinforcement. Now, when we say positive reinforcements, we know that certain foods may cause a happiness or a relaxing feeling. So it might cause us to have some self-soothing from it. It causes that feeling of feeling relaxed. But often it then causes some negative thoughts afterwards. So they might get that immediate happy feeling, but then afterwards it causes them to then feel distressed, guilt, shame and blame. And then it goes back into this negative cycle again. And then if you can see at the top, there's then problematic thoughts. And these might be things that keep the problem going. I need food to calm myself down. I need to relax. It's them negative beliefs that typically tend to hold around food. But they also might have other thoughts that tends to typically form around things, which is stuff like, I've got no control. I'm not able to do this. I'm not good enough. And often these are things that's been reinforced over time because they've tried lots of different ways, and they've tried lots of different ways of trying to change their behaviours. So I'm going to talk about different maintaining factors, and this one's emotional dysregulation. And you could say that this also could cover boredom, and that typically a person maybe doesn't like to feel boredom, and that's maybe why they turn to food. But emotional dysregulation is one of those maintaining factors why a person may turn to food at times. This theory comes from something called the emotion systems theory. So it comes from compassion focus theory. The theory is that we have 3 different emotion systems. We've got our drive, threat and soothing systems. It's all about how our brains evolved, and quite often we spend our days in the threat and drive system. So an example of this is that whenever we feel under, whenever we go to work, we may be in our fret system. So say, for instance, I'm in my fret system right now. I'm presenting to all you guys. I was in it yesterday when I got Ashley's email, for example, when she told me that there was this many people registered on. My immediate response was, oh no. The fret was very much detected. And when that happens, my body goes into a fret mode, and that causes a high level of adrenaline. Then I may go into my drive system, and in this, that's where I go into that motivation and resource seeking. So my emotions then go into driving, and then when it's activated, it pushes us forward to find the reward. So I start to prepare. So I start to think, okay, I can get all the things ready to do this talk. So I started to get my computer ready. I started to look at this presentation. I started to practice again. I started to think, okay, I'm driving myself forward, ready. Now, when we're in these fret and drive systems, quite often the soothing system isn't activated, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. When a person is emotionally dysregulated, they may try and then turn to food to try and find something to go into the soothing system. So they may try and find some kind of reassurance, and they may try to find something to cause them to feel calm and to cause them to feel loved. And often food becomes that artificial comfort system. It doesn't actually grow the soothing system though. Normally this is where I would ask why. Why do you think that? But I realise I haven't got the time to ask you guys why. But say, for instance, that you turn to food and you were in that soothing system, and gone back to that thought process, and you say you cracked open that pack of crisps and you ate them, and you finished the bag. Straight away, your brain's going to be telling you, okay, you're a failure. You've ate all of that food. Why did you do that? You go back into that fret system, and it just continues that emotional dysregulation. Where boredom might come in is that we're trying to chase away those emotions. A lot of people really struggle to sit with uncomfortable emotions, and we're a nature of humans, people, of not being able to sit with our emotions. So we always try and chase away the feelings, and that soothing doesn't always have to be food. It could be other things. There's a reason why we turn to other things in our lives. So there's many other maladaptive coping strategy, things that isn't as helpful for us. But food is one of those really big things, and this is why a person living with obesity may have them wider issues of where they've tried to soothe themselves with something else. And it's really important to consider this and to ask about, what does food mean to you? And it's one of those things that I use quite a lot. So what does that food mean to you? When you get home and when you're feeling stressed, how do you cope? What is helpful for you? What does that look like? What does it feel like? What sort of thoughts go through your head when you eat that food? I'm going to go quickly through one of the case studies of somebody that came into our disordered eating project. The reason why I use this case study, and I actually seen this client yesterday, she's still currently under me for therapy. She's at the end of her intervention, and I just double checked with her yesterday, is it okay if I still use you? Because obviously it was a while since lock, and she said yes. She said, please tell my story. I really want people to know. There's a number of reasons why she wants people to know. So the lady is called H. I will start off by saying that H is a lady of a larger size, and she has a number of different health conditions that is linked to her weight. So one condition that she does have is idiopathic intracranial hypertension. And she also has some autoimmune conditions which aren't linked to her weight, but that aren't helped by her weight. And often that is brought up in consultations with her GP around her weight. She originally, her family are all of a larger size as well. And that's the way that she describes them. She always says they're from a larger size. She originally started to use food to self-regulate from when she was 16 years old. Her history was that she had a sudden loss in her family. Her sister died when she was a teenager, so when she was 16 years old. It was an unexpected death, but there's something to be aware that her sister was unwell for most of her life as she had a chronic illness. She later lost her brother around about 2023, so 2024, so earlier last year. And her core beliefs, or her beliefs that she has about herself, is that that she is a strong person and that she cannot talk about the way that she feels. But she also has beliefs that the world is an unsafe place, and particularly she has some beliefs around NHS systems because of some of the way that her sister died and also some of the treatment that she's had. So she has some beliefs around them not treating her very well. She has a number of rules that she's created on herself. So I must keep my family safe. The world is unsafe and I must control my surroundings. I'm the only advocate. There's other ones, and by the way, that's not on here. So I am the only advocate for my family. So she is now the only sibling that's left, and she is the only advocate for her mum and dad. And her rules around, I am the only advocate for my family. I must look after people. It's a big one, and it makes a big difference. So keep that in your head. So when we were doing her formulation, typically what tends to be her trigger points are things going wrong. So her mum struggles with chronic illness as well and becomes really unwell quite fast. So family becoming poorly, people not doing the things that she tells them to do. So her family not looking after themselves. This turns her to that threat mode. So just thinking about those emotion systems and the emotional dysregulation. So she goes into that threat mode as soon as the example that she gave me, for instance, was her mum not ordering the medication in time. So her mum needed a repeat prescription. Her mum didn't order it in time, threat. So she started to panic. Her mum's going to become really unwell. And that caused all sorts of unhelpful thoughts in her brain. Oh no, what happens if she dies? What happens if this happens? What happens if? Lots of what we call hypothetical thoughts. Straight away, she felt she had to then try and soothe herself. So it caused lots of different emotional distress, fears, worries, panic, lots of different emotions going through her head. Straight away, she then went to find something to soothe herself, and this led to binge eating. So she was driven to food, and then went into what she thought was her soothing system by eating some food. Of course, she wasn't soothed, because straight away that consequences were, I'm a problem, I'm guilty, I've been told by the doctor I need to lose weight, why do I keep on doing this to myself? And she went straight back into the threat. Now, talking about the history, she's obviously got a significant amount of traumas that's happened in her life. So she lost her family, particularly her sister at 16 years old, due to medical mismanagement. She's lost her brother, and there is some beliefs around what had happened with her brother, and there was some, he'd visited a doctor that day. So in her head, she's linking them together. There's some things around her own health, there's some things around her mum's health. The world isn't a safe place, and the only way she can serve herself is food. And what she's been told is, go on a diet and you'll get better. Go on a diet and you'll get better. For her personal quote that she gave me is, if I didn't turn to food, I think I would have died. Killing myself wasn't an option. Food is the only thing that kept me safe at the time. Our work with H has been based around trying to create other soothing mechanisms, really trying to drive home around that soothing mechanisms and around how food is in a soothing mechanism and how it's keeping the issues going, and how actually that food is keeping her in that cycle, and how she doesn't have to take that personal responsibility of what happened. It's also around processing some of those earlier issues that had happened and understanding that trauma and some of the responses that she has had and understanding those beliefs. And that brings me on to talking about trauma. So again, remember, eating behaviours can be a communication, and trauma can be one of the reasons why people turn to eating. Sometimes, and for anyone who hasn't had any kind of trauma-informed training, it might be really helpful to go ahead and get some of that, and it's something to be aware of. Sometimes we may do things because of trauma, and sometimes we look on the outside and wonder why a person is doing something, and wondering why a person may make certain choices. But sometimes when we're in a freeze mode, which is a trauma response, they may, for instance, use food as a we may be using food as a way of trying to wake ourselves up out of that. Everyone's different. We all cope with life events differently, and we all experience events differently. It's really important that we need to recognise signs such as distress and avoidance, dissociations and hypervigilance. Food can be a maladaptive coping mechanism. Food can be a way of soothing ourselves. It's really important that we look beyond the surface and we look at where food sits within trauma events. So when did it start to happen? Again, just using that example that we talked about, it was really helpful to understand when actually food became a big issue. Something that we do within psychotherapy is sometimes we use things like timelines and understand exactly where that food became such a big thing to that person. I know that can't be done within everyone's practice, and I'm not talking about being able to do that with everyone, but just a question of what happened. Tell me what happened to you, or when did that become a big thing for you? And having a look into trauma training so that you can be aware of what trauma does to a person, and knowing that actually there's a reason sometimes why a person may become stuck. And just a really brief case study. This is a person who has all or nothing thinking, which is a really common cognitive distortion. And you've probably come across people that have this all the time, where they're either on it all the time or they're off it. And in fact, I think most of us have that thinking at times. But Kay is somebody that came from the eating disorder team, previously diagnosed with anorexia a number of years ago in her teens, re-referred years later because really struggling to I don't want to say take control, because I hate that word. It's not about taking control, but really struggling to get some balance because she was either all or nothing. She had a number of, her history was around childhood trauma, multiple adverse childhood experiences, neglect, divorce, emotional abuse, parental mental illness. There's a lot of core beliefs about not being good enough. There was a lot of rules around I must lose weight to be accepted. There's also lots of things there around I cannot speak my truths. I do not have a voice. I'm not good enough. Basically, there's a lot of rules around I should look like this. There's a lot of should, woulds and coulds basically. A lot of the triggers were feeling judged. So every time she felt judged, she would do something. She would try and take control, which would involve restricting food, over-exercising, constantly trying out new dietings, just cycling and cycling and cycling. And the consequences are that she would end up overeating anyways. She would be stuck in this cycle and just going back to, again, I know I keep on going back to this boredom eating, because that's typically what tends to happen. So we do so good and so good and so good and so good, but then ends up overeating. And I don't think it's about that. For her, it wasn't about that boredom. It was because of that all or nothing. She would try and be perfect, and there was too much perfectness of it. So perfection was one of those key maintaining cycles. Her quote was, "Food can be my best friend or my worst enemy. It takes over my life." And just really quickly, because I'm pretty sure I'm about to run out of time. Oh no, I'm doing okay. I'm on 14:50. Ashley, please butt in because I can't see anybody anymore. So please shout at me if I'm not doing, if I go over. So just what about low self-esteem? It's something to be aware of. And it's something that it's not something that develops by itself. So that could happen because of trauma. It could happen because of something else that is happening. But it's something we've got to be aware of. So low self-esteem happens because negative core self-beliefs keep us and lead us to unhelpful behaviours. Core beliefs influence our thoughts, and in turn, they create those rules and assumptions that I've talked about. So, for instance, the person that I've just talked about, there was a lot of rules of I must be perfect, I must do this, I must be able to, I must be able to fit into these pants to be accepted by my friends. It often leads to unhelpful choices such as yo-yo dieting and that all or nothing thinking and that self-criticism. Low self-esteem could be a maintaining process in itself, and quite often that work needs to be around psychological flexibility and spending some time about that flexibility. Again, it's understanding what's that wider picture, what happens in that wider picture, what is happening for that person. Food communication and food behaviours and body behaviours, they can be a communication. So what has happened to get you to where you are now? So final thing is around, is it an eating disorder? And this kind of talks about where Will was talking about as well. Disordered eating refers to unhealthy and distressing eating patterns. Eating disorders have a diagnostic criteria. Does that mean it's any less distressing if a person doesn't meet a diagnostic criteria? It doesn't. Quite often, a person can move from one. They can move from one thing to another. They can be overlapping. A person may have disordered eating, and often they may, without having an eating disorder, and they can be overlapping. And it does mean that they have a distressing. If somebody is telling you they are distressed about their eating, or somebody is telling you that they have tried and they have failed, and they keep failing at something and they are feeling distressed about it, we need to take it seriously and they need some support. The answer isn't another diet. We should not be providing another diet. The answer isn't another medication. It isn't. It's got to be a holistic approach. Obesity is complex. It is not just psychological issues. It is not just exercise issues. There is lots of reasons, and this is just kind of talking about the obesity map. There is not one answer to obesity, and we know that, which is the reason why everybody gets together to talk about these things. Obesity is complex. There's wider issues that's happening, but just because it isn't an eating disorder or disordered eating, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't treat it. If somebody wants support, then there should be a pathway for them. Just really briefly around Together We Talk pathway, and I'm aware some people are in the North East, which makes it difficult to be able to go in, but I know that there is some services like Eat and Distress, North England. I'd seen that they work in that patch. I'm not aware of all that's available in that area, but we were funded by the Community Mental Health Transformation Funding. We provide support to anybody who does not meet statutory service criteria. What's been really helpful for this is that we've been working really closely with North Cumbria Adult Eating Disorder team to ensure that we can provide a step up and step down service. So that means that we can work pretty well with people who are at risk as well. So for instance, if they are at risk of malnutrition, then we can then still work with them as long as they're under them for physical health checks. And it also means that we're able to recognise when somebody may be suitable for a lower intervention, and they can go into North Cumbria Talking therapies. It's based off an evidence-based approach. It uses cognitive behavioural therapy and compassion-focused therapy, and we have different pathways. So we have a more personalised pathway which uses psychotherapy approaches, and then we have a manualised approach which uses a co-designed, co-created, and co-designed, co-created, manualised approach, which looks at working around things like core beliefs and body image, and it's a whole programme that lasts over 12 weeks. The aim was to address service gaps, because we really had that little, like I said, that gap of people that didn't have anywhere to go beforehand. And as I said, quite often it's for people who have co-occurring mental illness. When they enter our service, they don't have to have a diagnosis, and we don't focus on specific diagnosis. We focus on what they're presenting with at the time. So they can come to us with anything, and we try and support them as where we meet them where they're at. And this just talks about where services fit together in North Cumbria. We're hopefully, well, we want to look at weight management services. We had some conversations before Christmas with Tia Free to see how it works, because we know that there is also as well people that get referred into Tia Free weight management services that would be better fit within disordered eating services, or that would maybe work better in our services than going into there, and then likewise opposite way as well. So breakout task, Ashley's going to have to help with this because I'm really bad at breakout rooms.
They're all ready to go for you, Sam.
I was a bit nervous at the start then. Let me just stop sharing the room. Okay, so I've got a task for everybody. I hope you can all see me. I was a bit nervous at the start, so hopefully that all made sense to you all. Before we go out, should I take some questions or should I go into breakout rooms?
Yeah, brilliant, Sam. Let's see if there's any questions. I know there was one in the chat asking whether you covered Eden.
Yes, we do. Sorry, I was looking at the questions.
That's all right. That's okay.
I should stop reading the questions. Yes, we do. So the service is a remote service as well. So you are very welcome to refer in. The referral form is on our website. But yes, we do. So please do refer in.
Thanks, Sam. Any other questions at all? I think there's been some comments, Sam, that you might want to have a read of afterwards, but I think there's some linking up in the chat. Slides, yeah, we'll send the slides out afterwards. That's not a problem. Well, should we go for the breakout rooms then, Sam?
Yeah. Should I tell you what I want you to do?
That'd be good.
So, what I want you to do is thinking about your practice and what you do in your day-to-day. And I want you to think about how you can adapt your approach to better understand patients who are living with obesity. So I want you to think about what questions can you ask them and how can you be specific to their needs. Well, hopefully now you've all, look, he's all went quiet then. So that always scares me when everyone goes quiet. Welcome back to the main room. So does anybody want to share some of the, how many rooms was there, Ashley? Should I go around each of the room and put them on the spot?
We haven't got time for that, Sam. We had 8 rooms, so.
Okay, I'll just ask, does anybody want to share really briefly what they came up with? And put the hand up. Bodo, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm Tandy. I'm a clinical educator for Cumbria Healthcare Trust. I deliver the training, how to have helpful conversations about weight training for the trust. So in our breakout room, I had a lady, I couldn't see the screen, her name. She worked with people with long COVID, and the other gentlemen there. They do mainly their consultations via the telephone. I kind of like shared like some of the things that I talk about when I deliver the training. For instance, having to ask the patient themselves if is it okay to talk to you about your weight, which is very important because you give them that opportunity to kind of like, yes, I would like to talk about my weight, or I don't want to talk about it today, maybe it's another time. And then we kind of like touched on how we could use the MEC approach to have those conversations.
Yes, love it. And I always usually tell people to go to MEC for the next step of learning how to do motivational interviewing and having those conversations in a compassionate and kind way. Thank you for that feedback. Anybody else? Have we got time for another one?
Very quickly, Sam. Yeah.
Rita?
Yeah, just quickly, because as a GP, when I get a phone call from someone to say, I want to talk about my weight, my starting point usually would be what happened that you ran today, to start exactly to find out the underlying reason for them, because the weight hasn't just come on in a day or two. It has been building up. So what happened that they actually contacted me today, and what else they have done up until now, and what kind of help they are looking at. And secondly, specifically in menopause, when women ring about menopause only, then I ask specifically, what is about menopause that you're interested in talking about? Then you do mention mood, but then I think it boils down to generally weight. So they themselves then bring it up, and then I can carry on from there.
Brilliant. Great, thank you. Again, we're looking at that wider picture. So, and we're also looking at, I really like that as well, looking at the past. So what have you tried in the past, and also what's brought you here to the now. So we're not just focusing on the here you go, here's a diet, which is what I hate. So, have we got any other? I can't see, for some reason my screen's all messed up.
Just got one more, Shad. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yeah, Shad.
Good.
Oh. Yeah, so I'm like lifestyle practitioner for Grow Well, Grown Healthy in Stockton. It's part of like Harrogate NHS, but it's based in Stockton. I only just started like 2 months ago, so I'm still shadowing at the moment. But what I learned is like obviously it's to do with like weight management for like childhood like obesity if they're like above like the 99.6 like centile on the chart. But it isn't to do with just weight. Obviously I've learned like over the weeks and months obviously we give advice on like sleep advice, obviously diet advice and exercise advice. So I thought like before I started, like I was like, oh, like I'm gonna do this, like say a session on like portion control, a session on like eat well guide, session on like snacking, and like you probably think like, oh, you're just gonna deliver these sessions, as you go along. But obviously, the more you think about it, it's more of a holistic approach to it. So like supporting like the sleep side of it, sociological aspects, even like psychological aspects. So it's like a holistic approach for the families, even like budgets and like financial side. Obviously living in poverty as well. So all that side to it. Obviously we do like a health needs assessment at the start of it.
Yeah.
Like health needs and a heat assessment. And obviously with them
I'm going to
questions,
start thinking about Burnley.
sorry. With them health needs assessment, obviously it gives you like a broader picture, like a bigger picture. So you can signpost, like, I don't know if there's like emotional like side of it. Like we've got a person called Debbie Jarvis, so we can like signpost for them like psychological side. Say if they've got like autism or anything, we can signpost like Daisy Chain and Northeast Autism Society, just different like services. And we just ask questions like, do you have any like emotional health difficulties? Obviously, have you have any support for it? And just like employment statuses, if they're receiving like the correct like financial support or benefits as well. And obviously if they can't, like we'll like kind like signpost as well. So it's like a big broader picture. That's what I've learned over like shadowing, There's no like quick fix. There's like
well done. And I think it was also echoed, the same thing was echoed in the chat by Bethany, that said, oh, sorry, I've just hovered over the room. Our room spoke about ensuring a person-centered, holistic approach, encouraging self-reflection on what goals they'd like to achieve and what they would give them and how they felt ready and to make changes. And I think one of the things that we need to do as practitioners is ensure that them goals are often not weight related, because, sometimes it can be really difficult when we have weight-related goals, and understand what matters to that person. And a lot of yous are probably working in a system like that. And I'm really glad that we do in Cumbria as well as the wider ICB system. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sam. It was absolutely fascinating and I've learned lots myself, which is brilliant. I'm conscious of time, so we're now going to go on to the last bit on our agenda, which is now looking at what you guys would like from the community of practice going forward. So I thought I'd just very briefly just talk about what a community of practice is. And then it will be a great chance to hear from yourselves. So a community of practice refers to a group of people who share a common interest, professional passion, and engage in collective learning to improve their skills and knowledge in a particular domain. So obviously for us, it's going to be healthy weight and treating obesity. So members of a community of practice interact regularly, they exchange ideas, collaborate on solving problems, which helps them to build that shared knowledge and deepen their expertise. And some of you might be wondering, how does a community of practice differ from a network? And all communities of practice are networks in the sense that they involve connections among members, and I've seen that happening today in the chat. But not all networks are communities of practice. So a community of practice differs because we have that shared domain, and it kind of becomes of that source of identification or shared interest. So that then helps to provide that common ground, creates that community where, as it says there, you know, the relationships are built through discussion. And then from that, what we should end up is with that body of knowledge, that kind of practice, basically, where we share information and support one another and create some tools and frameworks together. So bearing that in mind, we were going to do this as breakout rooms, but we are struggling for time. So we'll do it as a big group. What we would like to hear, if you want to come off mute, that would be great, or pop it in the chat, because we really want to try and capture this. What would you guys like to achieve from this community of practice? We're really keen that this is for you guys to kind of shape this going forward. What do you want this to look like? How frequently should we meet? So some of the logistics as well be really good to hear from you as well. So, what does a successful community of practice look like to you? We very kindly had Sam offer to speak today, but if anybody also would like to speak at some future sessions, it would be great to hear from you. It is really down to you guys in terms of what you want to get from this, really. Karen.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Ashley, and thanks everybody for contributing today. What a brilliant start is what I wanted to say, just sort of off the back of lock, and having so many people here today. I'm not sure if Will's been able to stay for the whole session. I think he might have sloped off to another meeting, but I wanted to reiterate as well. Hopefully we've managed to briefly show. Oh, Will's still here, thank goodness. Sorry, I'm sorry not to do you justice. I don't know why I thought you'd gone. But that connectivity between us and obviously Ashley and I and Will, we work for the system, and sort of spreading a way of working, and the day job stuff, I suppose, is what we're talking about. This is the community of practice around how we develop ourselves to support the day job. So we're not here doing the strategic piece directly, but we can absolutely inform the strategic direction of how we manage weight in the system. And what it allows for us to do in this group as well is to really have a play with things. Have we got some scope to be able to practice some things in pockets where people have got a passion for doing things differently? So I just wanted to say that absolutely. Sam, it's been brilliant today. This space can be yours. If somebody else wants to use this space to sort of share and learn or pose a problem or whatever, we can do it whatever way we like. I think the most critical bit is to, and we could put this into the chat quite quickly, is how often do you want to meet? Is it monthly? Is it bi-monthly? What feels realistic? Probably we'll keep it at an hour and a half, unless by exception there was something else we wanted to do. But so that's quite an easy-ish question that we could stick in the chat. But also, yeah, what would you like to see in terms of developing as a community? I'll shut up now. Sorry, Ashley.
That's all good. I'm just putting the questions in the chat. Yeah, we're getting kind of bi-monthly, quarterly so far. Some of the points so far. So we've got opportunity to build connectivity between services, one-stop shop on Boost to link professions and services together, mapping what's available across the patch. So I think a lot of it is kind of around linking. Some people said sharing good practice, ideas of what's worked for other services, networking opportunities, hearing about best practice. Any other thoughts from people in terms of frequency? Becky, research agendas explored and support to evidence good practice. Yeah, a lot of saying kind of bi-monthly or quarterly.
Ashley, I just wanted to jump in again because I can't keep my mouth shut. But I know you and I and Will had a play with a couple of interactive tools, which is almost like a bit of a message board that we could embed potentially as part of a web page on the Boost website, almost like a graffiti wall where people could come together and to make that connection or reach out to others in the system if we needed support. So and give us a thumbs up if anyone's up for having a play with that. It's new technology for us, so we'll definitely do it as a bit of a PDSA and a practice. But yeah, so we thought we might have a go at having a play with that as well in between this and the next meeting. So if you think that's a good idea, let us know.
Couple of thumbs ups.
I think, Karen, good suggestion about the wall as well. It could be a good opportunity as well to kind of formulate what potential topics are when we agree, whether it's quarterly or bi-monthly, like potential topics that could be just discussed or like a highlight, spotlight, whatever you want to call it. That could be quite a good one.
Yeah, people seem to be up for it in the chat as well, which is good. All sounds good. Fab. I think Sarah's gone now. It was Sarah that shared the tech with me, but I think she's disappeared. But really good way of just kind of keeping communication as well between these sessions, as we say, and linking people together, which would be good.
And I think someone made a really valid point as well in the comments about knowing what services are available and out there. I suppose it's again, that could be a good bit to do on the wall, but also do it in person as well, because as quick as you kind of do it on a website, it's out of date pretty much straight away. Whereas if you've got a kind of dynamic wall that just gets updated a bit more easier, that could work as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we've committed ourselves to having a play with it now, haven't we? So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Now.
Yeah.
Paul says,
bring on the wall.
Yeah,
bring
Sorry,
on the
someone
wall.
needed to say it. I love it. Thanks, Paul. Fab. Okie doke. I think some people are having to disappear off now for other meetings and things. So so let's call it a day there. Thank you so much to Will and Sam for coming along and presenting for us. Really do appreciate it. As I said, if any of you would like to come along, present your work, share what you're doing at any of these future sessions, please get in touch with us. As I say, this community of practice really is yours. And if you've got any further thoughts, just drop us an email, info@boost.org.uk. If there's anything specific you would love to see in this community of practice. And we'll be in touch soon with a future day, and obviously communicate with yourselves once we've got the wall launched. Good stuff. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.